Well, dozens of people in West Jerusalem have rallied outside the Israeli president's residence, calling for the return of family members being held by Hamas. Israeli President Ｈİ𝗲𝗄𝗱 met some of the families on Sunday. They're demanding that the government facilitate the safe and immediate return of their relatives. 222 people were taken captive by Hamas fighters during the group's offensive inside southern Israel more than 2 weeks ago. Well, one of them was 𝗱𝗲𝗱, and I'm now joined by 𝗺cie𝗿𝗲𝗱, his cousin. He joins me from Paphos in Cyprus today. Udi, thank you so much for your time with us here on Al Jazeera. Let me start by asking if you've had any news of your cousin. I know his mobile phone signal was tracked in Gaza at one point. Have you heard about how he is? Anything over the last few days?
First of all, thank you, Nastasia, for letting me speak out on behalf of those who can't. Sadly, we haven't heard anything from Tal, and right now he's declared a hostage and missing. So nothing is officially confirmed since his body hasn't been recovered. He's not in any of the Israeli hospitals. And his phone was traced to Gaza. Then we can only assume that he is being held hostage and hopefully still alive.
Udi, I understand that Tal has 3 children. Is that right? How are they and the family they're holding?
That's right. They're devastated. They're devastated. I mean, it's the general sentiment. I've heard the previous reporter, and I think she pronounced very well the sentiment in Israel. This is the darkest hour Israel has had since its foundation. And of course, every family impacted, including Tal's family, are just horrified, anxious. His 3 kids don't understand where their dad is gone. His wife is worried, sick, that we don't know. And we are not even sure what's the progress on bringing the hostages back. We keep hearing about the ground invasion, but we don't hear about the progress of how are they going to get the hostages back safely.
Udi, I have to ask you, because I've seen sitting in this chair a lot of children who've been killed in Gaza over the last couple of weeks. Do you have an understanding of how Tal's family is talking about what's happening there, how they're talking about it with their children?
I'm sorry, do I understand how they're mitigating the situation to the children?
Oh, how they're talking about what's happening in Gaza right now. We've seen so much violence in Gaza over the last 17 days. How is the family talking about it with the children?
I don't believe that the families are talking about the complexity of the situation in general. People are trying to keep the children as safe as possible, because aside from the trauma they've heard, they don't need to hear about the capacity of this war. They're not telling them about what's happening in Israel either. I can tell you that among the adult family members, there is a consensus that the war must stop. It doesn't matter if the people who are being killed are Gazan civilians or they're Israeli civilians. The loss is equal. The tragedy is equal. And the fact that both are not serving neither us nor the Palestinians, it is only escalating the conflict and definitely not leading to any resolution. Not one single rocket fired from Gaza onto Israeli hospitals or Israeli villages is going to advance the resolution of this conflict. And I don't believe that any bombing of Gaza, killing any Palestinian civilian, is furthering the resolution of this situation. I think that the war must end. This should be the call on everybody's lips. It doesn't matter if your position is that you support Gazan civilians or you support Hamas, or if your position is that you support Israel. But if people's interest is truly to save Gazans' lives, then the call should be equal, should be stop the war, stop the missile launches from Gaza, stop the Israeli bombing, and get immediate aid to Gaza, release the hostages. Because if Gazan civilians don't need to pay for the atrocious crimes that Hamas committed, so don't Israeli civilians need to pay for whatever crimes the Israeli government has committed, or whatever claims there are about the siege and about the conflict. And I have been a peace activist my entire life. I don't think there's any difference between the value of a Gazan civilian and my own. But if the calling out goes only to free Gaza and end the bombardment, and you don't take into account my pain and my safety and the safety of my cousin, who is a civilian being held hostage right now by the hands of Hamas, then I believe that this position is hurting the conflict. It's not helping Palestinians. It's actually hurting the cause. And I think that we could get together, the people who are truly, truly interested in stopping this conflict, who don't want to see any more deaths. Because right now in Gaza, there's a person concerned about their cousin just as much as I am.
I'm sure.
And rightfully so. And their pain is no less than mine.
Very, very well said. 𝗵cie𝗿𝗲 there, the cousin of Tal Haimi, who is currently being held captive by Hamas, calling for an end to this conflict, calling for an end to this war. Thank you for joining us here on Al Jazeera, sir, and for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.